other animal has such a grasp of deceptive behavior as this one. Praying mantises, wolves in sheep's clothing, the most feared predators in the insect world.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome back to Animal Tales, and today we're about to talk about a very unique creature, very unique insect, especially a giant, relatively speaking, in the insect world, and we're talking about the praying mantis. You know, I find them very fascinating. These are really uniquely, genuinely fascinating creatures, and they invoke a lot of mysticism. You hear so many stories about the praying mantis, whether it's from certain communities that not only worship them, but in a weird way idolize them. Some are afraid of them. I remember growing up, my grandmother one time told me that, I used to see these tiny praying mantis. And I remember she told me one time, if you lie, the way you can tell if somebody's lying is these little praying mantis would jump into your nose. And that made me very, very afraid of animals. Now, I grew up loving animals. I mean, I've held pretty much everything. I've held a spider, I've held a snake. But when I was growing up, I was very, very afraid because of this superstitious story. I was very afraid of praying mantis. And there's really nothing a praying mantis can do to you, right? Unless you are a couple inches tall and scurry along its habitat. But anyway, so I really find them incredibly fascinating. I mean, you have over 2,400 species all across the world, and they range, especially when it comes to their habitats, from tropical to temperate regions. They really love tropical climates, tropical habitats, and you can find them pretty much everywhere unless it's really, really cold. And I love the fact that they come in varying sizes. Not only sizes, but form as well. In the same time, color or appearance. I mean, they're incredibly fascinating creatures, and we're just about to talk about them. So let's talk about the praying mantis. Now, from a structure standpoint, I mean, I love the fact that depending on where you find these praying mantis, they come, again, in all shapes and sizes. You go from very, very small, minute praying mantis, as you see here, to bigger, and some of them even fly. Not all praying mantis fly, but most of them do. And but you also have some that are incredibly good at camouflage. I mean, look at this one right here. And standing still, you can't tell whether this is a branch or a leaf. But from a different angle, you can tell, oh, this is a praying mantis. Now, obviously, this is a really cool thing for it's a defensive strategy, because as a praying mantis, it does have animals that prey on it, like birds and lizards, and and funny enough, also other praying mantis, because praying mantis, they're also cannibals. We're going to talk about that later. But you also have different colors. It all depends on which habitat and what they're trying to adapt to, because they obviously adapt to whatever environment they're in. They use these unique adaptations, like camouflage, like color, like form, or whatever, to use for hunting, but also at the same time for hiding. So I really find that fascinating, and I love the fact that they're called praying mantis because they have two forelegs that are spiked, and they use those primarily for hunting. And I tell you, anything that they grab does not escape or will not escape. They're incredibly strong for such small creatures, but they are very vicious, incredibly vicious. And they hunt a variety of creatures. I mean, the best way to put it is, as long as they can catch it, they'll eat it. So depending on where they live, they hunt everything. There have been situations where they've caught spiders, they've caught birds. Like, just look at this video and tell me if this is not a pretty fascinating creature. Look at her just standing there. Not even intimidated. Guess who's coming to dinner? So like I said, what that video shows you is the fact that these creatures have no fear. They will pretty much hunt everything. They hunt frogs, they hunt lizards. There are videos that you can see them hunting. I remember that I saw a video of one basically, it was a situation where a lizard was basically hunting a praying mantis. And then the tables were turned around. And as you see here, next thing you know, the lizard becomes the praying mantis meal. And it's pretty fascinating because, again, who's bigger, who weighs more, but this little creature is fearless. And as long as it can grab you with those 4 arms or 4 legs, then you are pretty much done for. And like I said before, they're also cannibals, meaning they eat their own kind. And it's a really sad state. And oftentimes what happens is, you know, even in birth, and I'm going to show a video here, you'll see that even in birth, basically after they hatch, after they're walking around as tiny little praying mantis, they have to get away from each other because they instantly, number one, they look for food. They have to look for food because the mother doesn't stay there to help raise them because she'll eat them. So she intentionally leaves. So these little tiny praying mantises have to fend for themselves. And the moment they furry out, they have to stay away from each other because they're not each other's dinner. That's how crazy they are. But oftentimes, they don't necessarily hunt each other. It's just whenever they're in close proximity of each other, it doesn't really matter. As long as I can get you. You get me before I get you, or I get you before you get me. That's just the nature of the praying mantis world. You know, but oftentimes when they do eat their own kind, it's when a male, usually smaller than a female, as you see here, it's mating season, and he's trying to mate with the female. And oftentimes, she will accept. But she's accepting because she has a diabolical plan at the end of this. Before he dismounts, she catches him and eats him and basically dismembers the male. So his last duty on this planet is passing on his genes, but then he is absolutely torn to shreds immediately after. And in most 90% of the time, the male has no chance. Like, you have absolutely no chance because a praying mantis, basically the craziest thing is it can turn its head 180 degrees. It can turn itself 180 degrees. So if you're back there, doesn't matter where you are, you're caught, you're devoured. And the good thing is you pass along your genes and the next generation of you lives on. That's how crazy and fascinating this little creature is.
But when the male European mantis goes courting, he may well lose more than his heart. His female isn't as large as the banded mantis, but she can be just as unpredictable. He uses his feelers to calm her down.
You're about to be dinner, bro.
Mating begins, but this female has a double agenda. Is this a loving kiss or something more sinister? In exchange for his trouble, the male gets his head bitten off.
Yep.
But it doesn't seem to cramp his style. A decapitated male can carry on mating for several hours. The female's eggs will still be fertilized.
Look at her.
A separate mini-brain in his tail kicks in and actually speeds up his performance.
With no head.
Eating her mate gives the female extra protein to lay more eggs. So the male's loss is his offspring's gain. It's a kind of happy ending after all.
But I absolutely find a praying mantis absolutely fascinating, and it's one of those creatures that I think it brings out certain things and certain feelings and whatever's when it comes to people, and because a lot of different people have different feelings or thoughts or beliefs or whatever when it comes to praying mantis. And like I said before, there's certain people who actually revere this creature. I mean, there's a praying mantis fighting style when it comes to kung fu. Famously, you've seen Jackie Chan do that. You know what I mean? So the praying mantis is basically, it's like folklore. You know what I mean? And it's fascinating because a tiny creature brings out so many different kinds of emotions when it comes to us as people, you know. And for me, I grew up having this weird illogical fear of this creature, and I physically conquered that fear in my 20s. So it took me a long time. And even though I knew it would not harm me, but just that thought that was implanted in my head as a kid made me fear this creature more than the snakes that I've held, more than the spiders or scorpions that I've held. This little creature did that for me. But that's how fascinating a praying mantis is. And if you see one, don't kill it. It can't harm you, but if it's in your house, it can't really harm you. It really can't. And unless the spikes really go deep, you know what I mean? But even at the same time, you can take them off. You can peel it off. And it's not really going to harm you at all. It's not. And we're going to watch a video at the end of this where you're going to see how fascinating a praying mantis is. And again, just showing you how cool they are. They're cool. They actually, a lot of people keep them as pets, you know, in like a glass jar. You can do that. So they're not really hard to keep as a pet or as a creature in your house, you know. So they're not hard to keep. They're well maintained. They don't really need a lot as long as you feed them. You can feed them once a day or sometimes once every 2 or 3 days. If you feed them something big like a cockroach, you don't have to feed them all the time. Now they'll eat. Doesn't matter what you put in there, they'll eat them. But you're not supposed to overfeed them. Another cool fact about the praying mantis is the fact that they have compound eyes. What that means is their vision is incredibly outstanding, 180 degrees, and they can pretty much see anything. They can see in color. It's almost like seeing in 3D. They're incredibly fascinating. Another thing about praying mantis is if you do end up keeping a praying mantis, in captivity, a praying mantis can actually live for about 1 year or 2 years. But in the wild, oftentimes they don't even make it a month. You know, if they make it 6 months, I mean, it's incredible. And the reason being is in the wild, not just a praying mantis, a lot of animals don't make it to maturity or don't make it to old age because you are prey. Very few animals have the privilege of not being hunted and living to a ripe old age. But a praying mantis, unfortunately, oftentimes they just make it to a month or 6 months in the wild. So in captivity, you can probably keep them for 1 year, 2 years. And again, they're not hard to keep. They're not hard to maintain. They're easy animals. Again, all you have to do is just provide a temperate glass structure, and they're cool. They're cool. They're easy to do, and they're cool around kids. You don't have to worry about them hurting your kids or hurting your cats or hurting, you know, unless you keep cockroaches, which, fun fact, they're actually related to cockroaches. But other than that, they're easy to do and easy to keep. And usually you're advised to keep the ones that are natural to your habitat. You know what I mean? And even though you can acquire, but oftentimes invasive species are not necessarily allowed because what can happen? It can escape. So let's say you live in an area where you have orchid mantis, which are really small. Then some actually larger. But now all of a sudden you introduce an invasive species from a different part of the world that's bigger, then this thing will absolutely decimate the population of your orchid praying mantises. So that's why you always want to be careful, know what you're doing, always do research, talk to people if you're not aware, educate yourself. That's just my 2 cents. I hope you've enjoyed this incredible journey into the praying mantises world. I'm gonna leave you guys with an really fun video you guys can watch. And hopefully, I've always said, my job and my goal is to create curiosity, fascination with a lot of the animal kingdom, and hopefully you get a chance to observe, when you observe nature out there, the next time you are walking in a park and you see a bird. We see birds all the time. How about you just take a second and take a look? Appreciate nature in all its glory. Anyway, I'll see you next time on the next episode of Animal Tales. See you later, guys.
Mantids will eat anything that moves, including other mantids.
So tiny yet so deadly.
Time to leave.
Look at him. So small.
This tiny insect is now open to attack from predators lurking in the undergrowth.
Like Mama Praying Mantis.
Whether an individual mantis survives or not is partly a matter of chance.
Jumping spider.
Whether it's spotted by a predator. Whether it turns right or left. So far, its luck has held. But this hungry jumping spider is still in pursuit. A mantis is born with exceptional eyesight, but the spider's is even better. Although this young mantis can't yet fly, its long forelegs, evolved to catch prey, give it reach.
Keep going.
There seems to be no escape. But this mantis has a surprising line in self-defense.
Kung Fu.
Kung Fu, Praying Mantis style. Of course, it's all bluff, trying to look bigger and confuse its enemy. But it's got away with it.
For now.
Just staying alive for its first few hours is a significant accomplishment for a newly hatched insect. But there's still a long way to go. With a bit of luck, in 2 months' time, it will be as big and
Oh, you're about to be
beautiful
dinner.
as this orchid mantid.
Yep.
Or maybe not.
Dinner is served.
After all, mantids are cannibals.